right. Rumor has it that we are live. Are you okay over there, Mr. Albert? What are you looking at?
The glass looks like Ohio.
What is this glass, actually?
It's got a lot of... Baltimore.
Yeah.
It's got a map on it.
So yeah, that's
I saw Canton, and so I said, oh, Ohio. Okay.
No, not that Canton.
Not the good one.
So I want to start, before we go into the main part of the program, I do want to say, so if anybody misses this, they can rewind to the beginning of the program, but I am going to talk for a second about the anniversary lanyards. As an honorable mention for this project, it's not part of the actual book release from today, it's a parallel thing that I've been working on, but if you haven't already signed up, I'm going to draw your attention to this thread on the AA Roads forum, and I'll post the link here, but you can see where you have to click on the form. That's where you would click to sign up for it, and I will show you that in just a second after I paste this in the chat. So when you go to this page and you click on the form sign up link, it takes you to a page that looks like this. And you would fill this out. Obviously a bunch of this stuff is required, but not all of it is. And then you can hit submit when you've filled it out, and then what happens after you hit submit, it goes over to Adam Moss, who is keeping a track of the whole spreadsheet of the requests that we've had. We've had over 50 to this point, going on 60 in fact. Mm-hmm. So it's been received pretty well amongst the people who actually go to these things. So I'm going to leave a link to this as well in the chat, just in case for whatever reason you can't get to it from the links that I posted earlier. So that's what that second link is. That takes you directly to the lanyard form that you fill out. All right, so that's out of the way. Let me see.
Stay out.
Yeah, get out of here. Yeah, beat it. All right, so with that out of the way, good evening, everybody. I wanted to do a little presentation tonight, just to kind of put a capper on the release of the book, Road Meets an Illustrated History, which was released earlier this morning on May 11th, 2024, as I'm recording this. And we're going to spend some time going through the book. I'll show you kind of what it basically contains in case you haven't already seen. Why is my phone acting?
I will say that those people who came out to our 25th anniversary road meet got to see the sneak preview of this lovely book. Very, very fun to look through, I will say. Yeah,
so that's one of the things I wanted to do for the meet, and had I actually gone to that meet, I would have been the person who was actually the cheerleader in charge of all that stuff. But what I did was let me turn this media off. That would be nice. So it was the people who were at the SWIPA 25 meet were the first ones who got a chance to see it. And actually, I have the physical copy here, and I'm going to be flipping through this as well.
And I can say that there was a 3-hour lunch, thanks to the restaurant, but it took the whole 3 hours for this book going around. Everybody was taking it, looking through it. They were not just flipping the pages. They took their time with it.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was hoping the reception would be like. Yeah, because this, we'll talk about all the history of this project in a moment, but I am the regular host that you're used to hearing from on this channel. I'm Dan. I'm the author of the book. I'm your gracious. I guess this makes me a published author now, doesn't it?
You're famous.
Something like that.
Or infamous.
One or the other. Pick one. And you recognize this guy's voice, I'm sure, by now. He is Steve Alpert of alpsrose.net. He has volunteered his time to be here to take part in this little two-person roundtable. So nice of you to join me for that.
I appreciate the invite.
Okay, so as we said, the book release on the 11th. So to be crystal clear about what was unlocked today, And I will preface this by saying that there are links to all of this relevant material in the description of this video, in case you haven't already discovered this stuff. You can find the links to the 4 release content pieces in the description of this video. So what you're getting is the full Road Meets book, which is a 180-page PDF. You're getting another PDF, which is the master road meet list that we compiled over the last 6 months. That basically is reproduced in the book, but we kept the meet as a separate document. You're getting a link to a photo album on Flickr, which has all of the meet photos that we collected, not just the ones that are in the book, but every one that we have access to. So that is being included. And lastly, you're getting a link to a Google Maps document created by Paul Dienhart, which is reproduced to a degree in Appendix D of the book, but there's a separate link to the full interactive map in the appendix, and there's also a separate link to that map as well, included outside of the book for you to reference. So you're getting those 4 things as part of this release that came out this morning. I addressed the lanyards right when we went live, so I won't repeat myself with that. If you haven't already signed up for one of those, please do so, because we will be taking your requests for those for not an indefinite amount of time into the future, but we are still taking new requests as the weeks continue here. And of course, if anybody has any questions about the project, they can either throw them into the live chat here, or you can reach me at my email address, which is roadwaywiz@gmail.com, and I'll, if they are polite, I will do the best I can to answer them. Or if they're not polite too, maybe I'll answer them. That
angry
works
faces.
Too.
There will be angry
I'll
faces.
just send angry faces back at you. That's fine. So this is what the anniversary lanyards look like, and we gave out quite a bunch of them at the meet out in Pennsylvania last weekend. So you can see we kind of went all out here. The card is laminated, and we used the popular Road Geek fonts for the text. So, and it's the same color green that you see on the freeway signs, more or less. Yeah, so this is what you basically get. It's a laminated card, and there's a complimentary lanyard piece that comes with it. So these are available to order. They are, like the book, they are free of charge to you guys. So definitely take advantage of this. The lanyards were the idea of Adam Moss. They were not my idea. I guess my role in the lanyard part of it was facilitator, because Adam had the idea, and I knew of a publisher who could actually get these made. And it turns out that publisher is also in the Roads community. Jason Hoffman, who runs the YouTube channel 504 Road Trips, put these together for us.
At lower left.
Yeah, he mailed me his for some reason. I don't understand why he did that. He's a dope. But I gotta.
And you did get we saw that you got some other ones on May the 4th.
Yeah, so after the meet, I think showing these off in person made people decide that they wanted them, which I think is not surprising. We did get about 7 to 10 new ones in the aftermath of that meet, so that's good to see. So the book, 180 pages. Now the releases of everything are digital. There's PDFs and there's links to stuff, but it's up to you really how you want to deal with this. One of the things that I wanted to do was create my own hard copy of it, and so mine, you basically print out all the pages, and I have the plastic protector sheets for all the pages that I print out. So everything is, and I had the binder sitting around, and I was wondering what I was going to do with it, and so that was a nice use for it, I think. Yeah, so I made a nice little spine cover for it, and then this is the last page in the PDF in the lower left. That's the back cover that I'm using. But yeah, it's really up to you what you want to do. You can keep it as an electronic document. You can print out your own version of it and do it however you like. it's really meant to be a flexible thing. We're not trying to tell you how to consume this thing. We really want you guys to make this an individual thing on your own, and just really take it all in, and hopefully you have some fun with it, and hopefully it's something that you enjoy. Before we get to the stats, no, it's not going to let me do this way. All right. We'll come back to the stats in a moment, but I want to bring up, let's go through some of the contents of this release. So the link to the Flickr album brings you here to this site. This is basically what it does is it reproduces all of the meat photos that we've gotten from the last 25 years, and it reproduces them here. And you can, I'm going to try to reformat this. All right, let's try that. Yeah, there are 238 photos in here. They all come from from really all the road meets that have ever been hosted. When we started this project, it really got going in the fall of 2023, and I was sort of the one who I guess sort of had the idea for doing something commemorative, but I didn't really know what it was going to look like. I knew that something involving meat photos would be kind of cool, and so along the way, this sort of evolved into there's there's that picture. This sort of evolved into like paying tribute to the last 25 years through meat photos and kind of taking people back to those events that way. This is actually, there are a couple of pictures in this book that are not specifically meat photos that made their way into the book. I would say this one is the highlight of the other category, because it's one of the great moments in road enthusiast history, and as far as I'm concerned. Mike Tantillo participating in Occupy Bennington. So there's that picture is actually on one of the front cover pages of the book. And as you work your way through, you have basically everything. It's more or less in chronological order, and it's more or less in alphabetical order per year. That's how I kind of broke this out. Steve was here for the faux shizzle sign.
Yeah,
yeah. So that's the photo album. We'll scroll through the book in a little while to show you more of the contents of it. But I want to switch over to the Google Maps document. This was what Paul put together. Now, he actually was working on this completely separate from what we were doing originally. He actually was curious to kind of put together something in map form that detailed where all these meets had taken place over the years.
And I could be wrong, but I think he was doing that and then found out that something similar was happening here. And I recall that I messaged him. I said, you may want to take a look at this. And
I think you were the middleman initially. Yeah.
Just to get these two things linked together here.
Yeah, because basically what Paul was trying to do was the same thing that we were trying to do. It's just that he had a different spin on it than ours, but the two spins were complementary of each other. So we just decided, well, let's just throw together what we both have. And, Paul had some stuff that we didn't know about, and I think vice versa, in the other direction. And so what we ended up with was this map that places a pin at the location of every one of the meets over the last 25 years. And what you will see is that there are certainly parts of the country that are more represented than others. Certainly more cities that are represented than others. I mean, my God, look at the Pittsburgh area.
History.
Well, Pittsburgh is where it started, so it's not surprising in a way. But, so this is a really cool visual to kind of help, because it's one thing to actually look at the list of meets. You don't necessarily have a good picture of what that looks like on the map. But Paul's map really visualizes the list in that respect.
Where and when was the one meet in Mountain Time? There it is.
Yeah, well, Mountain Time is represented right here.
I was there.
There it is. Man, you were also at this one too, I believe. We do have, well, the Iceland meet counts in our canon, so we have a peg for that one. And we also have a peg all the way up at...
That one absolutely counts, because that was announced as a meet.
Yeah, up at Dead Horse, Alaska.
Iceland will allow it.
I think the story with Alaska, didn't you announce that one also?
Alaska,
weren't you like kind of throwing it out there?
No,
that
Alaska was announced as a, do people want to join us? And we got 3 of us together, and others who were interested but couldn't do it on that schedule. And the 3 of us said, well, let's do it because we all said we could. Iceland was, we all decided to take our own trips at the same time and then get together for an evening and talk about it. So that was more of a friends meetup. But I'm not going to say remove a marker from this canon list.
You can't remove one of the more far-flung markers.
No, that,
right?
What I noted, though, is that there was a road meet in Dublin that I announced and did have someone else show up. And so that needs to be added, and I'll work with Paul on that one.
I didn't know about the Dublin one. When was that one?
I announced it to the Sabre group, and there was a little bit of interest. I think because no one knew me there, they were less likely to wander over to their enemy country there.
Oh, dear me, who is this guy? Yeah, so that's the map, and one last thing I'll say about it, you can click on any of these dots here, and it'll tell you which meet it was. So, there have been a few Cleveland meets over the years, for instance.
You saw both of their buildings.
Saw both of their buildings. And I'm sure everybody was glad they were not Detroit. Yeah, so you can kind of, each dot is color coded by year and all that too, so that helps. The P's, by the way, are the meets that are planned for the rest of 2024 that haven't taken place yet. So we wanted to include those on here as well. All right, so that's the map. We've gone over the photo album. The list is pretty straightforward. Again, it basically, if you imagine the map that I just showed you and just put it into list form, that's really all this is. And this list rather is reproduced in the book itself. So if you're just looking for the list of events by year, this is what you'll get in here. And this only goes up through the SWIPA 25 meet from a week ago. So it's not like the other meets that are planned for 2024 haven't happened yet, so I'm not going to include them in this list. All right, so that's that. Let's go through the book a little bit, and then we'll talk about statistics and all that. So there were... talk about book titles. The working title of this project from the beginning was History of Road Meets. It was a very generic title. I didn't feel like it was a permanent solution to the problem of what to call the book. And I actually batted around the idea of different titles to a couple of the guys from Gribble Nation, Adam Prince and Doug Kerr. Adam, by the way, did contribute the foreword of this book. And so after batting around for a little while, we agreed on the title that we have today, which I think works pretty well. Certainly tells you what the book is about, and it tells you really a lot about what the format of the book is, which is more of an illustrative piece than an actual written piece. The cover photo here, I mean, you could have picked a whole different bunch of photos. It's hard to really, if 60 people printed out their own version of this book, I'm sure you'd get 60 different covers.
I would say because you were the primary author, put together this book and got all the content for it, your meet that now holds the new record is pretty iconic. I think it belongs. I don't think you can make a great case for almost it. There's only a couple others. I think this is a very strong case to be the cover. I think it's very deserving.
Yeah, and I suppose that there might be...
Like the original meet would be another one.
Yeah, like there are different other ones that make sense. And,
only a couple.
I did think about using other ones because I wanted to avoid the potential look of being self-indulgent with this thing. But
It's your book.
I think it is. Well, I mean, it is my book, and yeah, the buffalo meat, the mark that you're talking about is the most attendance at a road meet in history.
Absolutely.
And so, in the end, I felt like to really capture what a road meet is, I feel like this is the picture to use. You got a whole cast of characters in that picture. And I believe Mr. Alpert is in there somewhere.
You said characters. So
Yeah, well.
yeah, I am just left of a send help sign.
That's right. You're never too far away from it.
I'm never too far away from needing it. That's correct.
Okay, now here's another one of these outtake photos that I knew it had to be in here somewhere,
Yes.
but I was like, where do I put this thing? So I put it on one of the inside cover photos, on the inside cover pages there. We talked about the Occupy Bennington picture, which is iconic. And then you have your dedication pages here. There were a lot of people who were very helpful during the process of the last 6 months helping this thing become a reality, and I think I covered everybody who was absolutely the most helpful. I probably could have added a whole nother page to this if I wanted to make sure that every single person was recognized, but these are the people I single out for really being my first points of contact during this whole process, so thank you to them. You have a little bit of a piece here from Shakespeare, which I really like. I think it's kind of poignant if you think about what it really means. The idea of the world being the stage and the people being the players. And we all turn up at these things and we play out our own unique parts every time. So I thought that was cool. Adam Prince, as I said, contributed the foreword to this. You can read that on your own time. You can also read my introductory words about the book on your own time. I think it's important that I point out that in the book, I make the point of saying that the pictures that are in this book are intended to be representative, not necessarily comprehensive, because there are some pictures that are of significantly lesser quality, and so they don't really look very good when you put them in a book format. But this problem is negated by the fact that I created the photo album. So every picture that we have access to is in this web of pieces of stuff somewhere. It may not have made its way into this book, but I certainly tried to pick the best pictures, and I leave it to you to figure out if you think I succeeded or not. This is kind of like the secondary cover photo, because from this page you open right up into the actual book itself, the contents of it. So the format of this book is very simple. You have the lead page for the year, which lists out the meets that took place, and then on the following pages you have the photos. So in '99 we had 2 meets. This is actually 3 different pictures that I stitched together to form a single shot, more or less. And then you have the famous first picture from February of '99 there. And then, again, it's the same format for all 25 years, so I won't, spend too much time going through this. But you'll see the list to the best of our ability. It was interesting, especially in the early years, like 2000 through 2002, 2003, something like that. We had to go into the Wayback Machine. We had to go back into MTR and look for stuff.
Absolutely.
And we actually found a bunch of meets in like 2000 and 2001 that I certainly didn't know about, and Adam Prince, he kind of thought that stuff had happened, but he wasn't very sure about it, but we found a whole bunch of other stuff that we really didn't know about. And this was only in the last 2-3 weeks that we found this stuff.
I hope that you did not click on any links that you saw.
I think I stayed clear of all that.
Usenet is a wild country for those of us who remember it.
I've heard some of the stories about the Wild West, yeah. meat photos really didn't become a regular thing for a few years, like until like 02, 03. That's when you really started to see them. So we don't have a whole lot of documented meat photos for those first 3 to 4 years or so. But you know what? Mark Sensabaugh looks like he hasn't aged one bit in the last 25 years. This was, what is this, Elmira in 2002, yeah. Yeah, some people you look at them and you're like, wow, this person hasn't changed one bit. And then others you look at and you're like, I don't even know who this person is. And then they tell you who it is and you're like, whoa, that's who that was? You know what I mean?
There's a lot of that. I look back at meat photos, and as I get older and the meat photos don't, I'm just like, I look like that once? Wow, I'm glad I changed.
Yeah, speaking of which, this moron on the right here, this was Albany of 2003, yeah.
I think my my friend who I was driving with on that road trip took that photo of us. He's not in the photo, but he volunteered to do that, and that's people do that now. People, people who came to the Pittsburgh meet saw a couple of non-road geeks, family members, and they may or may not want to be in the photos. They have often in the past volunteered to take the photos, which is for some of the earlier photos before everyone showed up with tripods.
Yeah.
That's where you got your photo. If somebody showed up who didn't need to be in it, otherwise there may not have been one.
Yeah, and I think that happened in New Orleans. Dave Roth's wife took the day one photo.
Yeah.
And then
the
day two photo was the drone. But day one was taken by her, yeah.
Yeah.
So you basically get the idea here, right? It's the single hardest thing when I look back at how this book came together was getting the list together and getting the list accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the early years, like for the first 5 or 6 years, I would say. I think we got it pretty good. The problem is that in the early years, there were multiple different outlets that meets were organized in. MTR was just one of those places. And so it's possible that, for instance, with the West Coast crew, that they did things, individually that were separate that we just don't have a record of.
They were informal on the West Coast. I've heard this from people like the CA Highways. Daniel Fagan has been a mainstay, and he explained to me. I finally met up with him for lunch, and back in the day, that's what they would do. They would be like, "Oh, I'll be in the area," or 2 or 3 of them would get together for lunch, talk roads. They said, and this is, I know, a bit off topic for this book, but they were about meeting and just chatting as opposed to going around on tours. Going around on tours was a very East Coast thing back in those days before it became the norm. So that's why we may not have records of it, because a lot of it was just that. It wasn't. It was official. It was announced, but it wasn't something that is really represented with a photo.
Yeah, so we think, the total number of meets that we've documented, including the ones that are still to come in 2024, is about 290. We think that this number is accurate to at least 98%. Just by process of elimination, there's just not that much that would be left out there that we wouldn't know about. And this is what happens when you research something for 6 months. You eventually you cover all corners, and you come to a point where you're like, well, I think we've got it. And I think we finally reached that point about, I would say, as recently as 2 weeks ago, where we were like, you know what? I feel pretty good about this list at this point. The meat photos, again, some meets simply didn't have a good photo, and that's not an uncommon thing. As I said, the meat photo phenomenon really took off like 2002, 2003, and it has continued to be a main feature. And one of the things that I'm most thankful for is that we have so many meat photos preserved, because the pictures are what really tip off everybody to the fact that these events took place. In some cases, I I would not have known about these events if it had not been for somebody sending me a picture from, oh, hey, this Lansing road meet that happened in the year whatever. Here's the meet photo for that. Like, I would never have known that there was a meet in, or whatever, like, but yeah. So we attacked this from multiple different perspectives, looking for the same basic outcome, which was we wanted to make as thorough a list as we could, and then once we had that list, we wanted to see how many meet photos we could attach to that list. And there were over 240 pictures that we discovered, and some of these pictures we chose to omit even from the photo album, and I'm talking about wedding photos, because we had quite a few Road Geek weddings over the years.
And some amazing, unforgettable moments from those.
I've heard some stories going back.
Yeah, the Carolina Hurricanes will tell you all about it.
You're talking about Adam's wedding, right?
And I'm talking about their mascot.
Well, but the mascot appeared at Adam's wedding, right?
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
And therefore, it is officially part of their history as a sports team.
We decided not to include wedding pictures in here. On purely procedural grounds, because those aren't technically road meets; those are invitational private get-togethers.
We have had invitational road meets in the past, though. So.
Yes, we have, and some of those pictures have been included in the book.
Judgment call. Okay.
I think that I draw the line at a wedding, in my opinion, and this,
sure.
Yeah, I think that.
I agree with that.
Every author, when you're researching a topic, you have to kind of make your own decisions in terms of what content you're going to include and what content you're going to leave out. There could have easily been an appendix in this book with just wedding photos. That is something that I looked into, but I decided that it didn't really make sense to have a whole nother section of a book with additional pictures that really didn't fit the theme of the actual book. So we do have them in the vault, so in case we ever decide to use them somehow, we might go back into the safe and unlock those for people to see someday.
It's
but
not safe.
It is never safe around my place, that's for sure.
Not when I'm here.
Hardly ever. So we're into the 2010s now as we keep scrolling through this thing. 2011 was the year where we had the most meets that were documented. There were 20 different events that year. And I think I've had conversations with a few old-time road geeks. I don't know if I've had this talk with you before, but certainly...
I'm not old. I'm just big-boned. Old-boned? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Get off my lawn.
I've had this conversation with Adam Prince and Doug Kerr, for instance, and we've kind of been batting around the idea of what is the era of quote-unquote peak road enthusiasm, and we agree that it's
yet to come.
Well, you could take the eternal optimist standpoint and go that way, and there wouldn't be anything wrong with that necessarily. But at least through the first 25 years, if you were to pick out a period where we would say it peaked, there seems to be a consensus on the 2010 through 2014 time frame. Yeah, some of these pictures are just hysterical. Yeah, here's the one with Santa Claus.
Is that Santa Claus or no? That
is Santa.
That was actual Santa. So we've had Santa Claus, and that's a different geek phenomenon. Yes, the meet where we had the meet, and as we were there, the bells started ringing. It was, "Guess who's coming?" And it came Santa Claus. And when Santa Claus came into our meet, we said, "Well, you're joining us." And
well, you're
history is made.
Too bad, old man. You're getting the picture with us.
It was more than happy to be a part of it.
That's one of my favorite meet photos that has ever come out. Yeah,
it was a great time. We all agreed that was better than the rest of that meet, and probably pretty much any other meet. Is how do you beat Santa? So,
it's certainly a unique thing.
You're never going to top that.
I want to point this out. So this was actually, there was a day in 2012, this was August 11th, where there were two different meets, one on each side of the border. the international border. So there was a get together and a meet photo in Port Huron, and then what do you know? There's some of the same people in this picture in Sarnia, just taken a couple hours later. That's a very interesting idea. Yeah, I like these meets that have these really unique, memorable things about them. Speaking of unique and memorable, here's that faux shizzle picture again. Yeah. So as we go through, 2013. I mean, you get the idea now, right? So, there was one. I thought there was one in here that I wanted to highlight. Oh, and it's still coming up. Yeah. Well, here's the Iceland picture. It counts.
Yes.
And there were other gimmicky meets too. So in 2016, there was also the tuxedo meet where everybody.
April 1st. That's why.
So that was all right. So it was held on April 1st, right? And so because it was tuxedo, everybody.
I announced this meet, and I announced it on April 1st, and pretty much to gauge was there enough interest for me to actually hold it, and there was, and so. Okay, then we're going with this theme, and to our credit, no two people showed up with the same thing. You see, there's different dresses, different suits, tops, bottoms, belts, ties, fake suits, bow ties. No two people wore the same outfit. It worked perfectly.
Yeah,
it was, and we all gathered in the meat restaurant, and you can imagine how the wait staff were reacting to that. That is some of our most fun we have is when outsiders to the road community see us and we're doing something where they're like, who are these people? What's going on here? And everyone just starts having a good time with that, whether it's Santa, whether it's the tuxedos, whether it's heckling Jaromir Jagr, whatever it is. there's memories to be made.
That was not at a meet per se, but yeah.
But it was road people.
It was road people, yep. Yeah, what happens when a Rangers fan, a Penguins fan, and an Islanders fan get together at a Hurricanes game?
Hurricanes versus Florida.
Yeah, because Jagr wasn't playing for Pittsburgh at that point, right?
It was no one. That's what made it great. That's what we try to do. Is we try to make memories with meets. Any kind of meet, public, private, whatever it may be, we're here to make memories together. And this book really is a forever memory now. To me, that's the best part because we're all getting older. There's going to come the day when I'm not going to have a memory like I do. I mean, my memory's already crap as it is, but it's going to get worse. And to be able to have this to look at and jog my memory as I get older, you can't put a price on that.
Yeah, and that's really what I think this book is about, and that's really what I want people to take from it, is that you're putting all the pictures of these events together, and they will jog your memory of where you were and what happened at those events and who was there and who did you hang out with and all that stuff. Yeah. And we have some honorable mentions in here too, like the 2017 solar eclipse. There were multiple different organized get-togethers for that. This, I think, was the most prominent one. The Send Help sign came to the eclipse viewing, so that was pretty cool.
Mine was not photographed. We had 4 people. Mine. It was one where different road enthusiasts reach out and basically everyone was just going, I'm going this way. Who wants to join us? And interesting.
Here's your Alaska meet photo taken at the Arctic Circle on the Dalton Highway.
Right before we broke the brakes. Yep.
Yeah. So the 3 people in this picture were panelists on my Alaska webinar, and we tell the full story of that journey up the Dalton Highway in that episode. If you haven't already watched that one, I definitely recommend that. That was an interesting roundtable right there. And then another one of my favorites that was a contender for book cover was this one, the Golden Spike meet, which was a very special occasion. There are not many meets that take place around active construction sites or that grant access to them in the way, certainly not in the way that this one did, where the highway was about to open. And we had a gentleman who had contacts with the PTC and got us access to the new 95 flyovers before they opened, and that's where this picture was taken. So that's actually another favorite photo of mine. What a shock, because I work in engineering and construction, right?
What a shock, because you've led people onto construction sites before the road opens.
Well, there's a picture about that coming up, actually. Yeah, so 2020, as we get into more of the more recent stuff, there's
that's an important one, I think, right there, because COVID had just hit, and for I think for everyone here, this was our first time socializing. Outdoors, spaced apart, but still, just seeing each other after weeks of isolation, you couldn't put a price on that.
You know, there's only one meat photo in this entire book that takes up a full page, and this is the one. So you can read into that whatever you want in terms of messaging and importance, but I think that this one is certainly one of the most memorable and most significant, certainly of any of the ones I've ever been to. And I felt like this, you know, I don't think this ever was a contender for a cover photo, but it's one of the ones that I look back on the most fondly, because again, these pictures jog your memory of what happened at the event, and in the case of this one, you know, what was going on in the background, you know, nationally and internationally as well. You know what's also fun is to see how Rainey grows through the years with these pictures.
Once she starts going to the meets.
Yeah.
As you said, it's true for all of us. You go back to the early pages, some of us who are still active in the community are college age or high school age when they start appearing in the meet photos. There's multiple people now who started with their parent driving because they were not old enough to drive, and now they organize meets and whatever else, and wedding for a couple of them coming up, sort of thing. So it's fun to just scroll through the pages and watch different people grow up and everything. There's so much you could get from this. So many different directions to take this book.
Absolutely. And then as we emerge into the post-COVID world, oh, by the way, here's what you were alluding to a moment ago.
Yeah. That's the one.
I
remember that.
So the Golden Spike meet was not the only instance of this, but meets like that kind where you have like a little tour, and of course, like in that particular case, it helped that I was actually on the job, so I could just get people on whenever I wanted to. So that definitely helped that one become a reality. And then as we get out of COVID, you know, the first really big meet out of COVID was this one. You know, you never really forget the first one that you host. I will never forget the first one that I went to, which was one of yours. And I certainly will never forget the first one that I oversaw and put together and hosted.
And I will never forget that night we went to the game together, and then we were just out talking after that about what it was like to host your first meet. I will never forget that conversation we had.
Yeah,
that was a memorable moment right there.
Yeah, it was, and that's something that just you and I shared. Like nobody else
But it was
there for that.
It tells you the power of hosting a meet, though. It's a very powerful thing to have that.
I think
it's very memorable.
Yeah, I think that the power of it certainly came through, and also I think a lot of it was the timing of it, because we were kind of coming out of what had happened the year before, and this was really the first thing that really happened of a large magnitude.
The number one thing I remember from that is you were so grateful and happy that people showed up. You were worried how many people are going to show. Is this meet going to be a dud? And when you host a meet, they will come. It's an interesting thing, and I know we're going to talk more about that later, about meet attendance and the significance of that, because there's a lot to talk about on that topic. But
no,
it's people don't sign up for this and then back. One or two, you may get this, I'm backing out, You may think, oh no, everyone's backing out. And you get there, and like the 25th anniversary meet, it dropped from 30 people to 26 people. And you realize, okay, one or two people, but then others show up you weren't expecting. So I have the perspective on this. People who may host a meet ever going forward, don't put too much weight on the yeses, nos, whatever. If you want to host it somewhere, go for it, and they will show who want to be part of it. And they who don't show up, they're missing out on memories.
Yeah, so we will talk about this whole phenomenon of attendance in a little bit, but yeah, for me, this is one of the best ones I was ever a part of. That's for sure.
I'm foreshadowing some of our conversations.
I think you are too.
All with intent. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's Philly the following year. That was Jay's first meet, I think. Philly 22.
You have to look back at the photos.
Yeah, I think that was his first. I haven't been able to get rid of him since. And then in 23, this is the cover photo. Mm-hmm. Buffalo. And then Shondor with the great sense of humor, where he positioned himself for this one. Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, he's always had a great sense of humor, hasn't he?
Really do.
And then the thing that I think is going to be interesting in the years ahead is to see what happens with the rejuvenated West Coast base. Tom Fearer really grabbed this by the horns and put together the first significantly organized West Coast meet in 2023 with Fresno, and he did a follow-up.
You know what I'm going to say to that is it may be the first one that's organized like what people think of as a road meet, but I would not call that the first West Coast road meet. I would say
no. I'm talking about like the rejuvenated version of it, like
the first one that seems like other ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So he did one in Bakersfield as a follow-up. It'll be interesting to see like if he's able to pick up a really good core following with these things. That's California/West Coast based.
Right.
So that's going to be something to watch in the next few years, because I know he's got a ton of ideas for stuff that can be done out that way. And here's the New Orleans pictures. Yeah, day 2 was a drone picture. And then I'm a little disappointed you guys didn't get a full group photo. But we had a cake. Yeah. So there's that.
We got the photo towards the end. We got everyone who was left standing down there. We did. The photo may not have been available. Actually, I have it on my camera right now. You want me to hand you the camera?
No, I'm good actually.
Why?
Well, it's a little late to put that in the book now, but
but nobody asked. No, I do have. I will get that just to present it. And
what?
I think this is an important topic to talk about.
Which topic?
These are not the last meat photos you'll ever see.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that's the case.
Yeah.
The thing I like about this picture on the bottom of the page is the callback to the first photo. How it's printed out and framed right there. It's kind of hard to see. You wouldn't necessarily notice it, and you kind of have to be looking for it to see it, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff here.
There,
that's lovely. Yeah. We'll put that right in the book. That's for sure.
Wait, chicken.
But so having this as the last picture in the book, I think, is pretty symbolic. It helps complete the circle. And then the book kind of fizzles out from here. But you notice that there are places left for the meet photos of future meets that have yet to come, and future years that are yet to come. And these pages, as we scroll through the blank ones, it's important that you remember that history is always being written. What is happening today will be the history tomorrow. and it's up to you to pick up where I left off. You know, I did the work these last 6 months of... Was that one from...
That's the one.
Really?
That's us under the future viaduct. That's everybody who was still there. I could give you this photo.
You can send it to me. That's fine.
I just get it off the camera.
Yeah, how long is that going to take?
With me, you never know.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
All right. I'm going to write a note to myself, send you 5038.
But,
Well, there'll be an appendix to this book, I think. There'll be, as we go on, there'll be more appendices.
You think there will be another edition or something?
I think as we have more meets, you can have the 2024 to 5 booklet, 2026 to 7 booklet sort of thing.
No.
Never know.
We could do like a year in review kind of thing. You know, we put something out at the end of every year. I'm not opposed to that idea. But yeah, so the pages at the end of the main body before you reach the appendices are left blank intentionally. Tell your own story. You know, that's what I want you guys to leave this book with, is that what you do with it moving forward, what you do with the community moving forward, is up to you. And this is your community, just like it's mine and just like it's Steve's. You know, and we all play a part in the collective history of this community. So I hope that you folks in the years ahead will take that to heart and pick up where I left off. I've done the hard work. I've done the last 25 years. Keeping current is the easy part. So hopefully you guys can actually do a decent job, you know, like Steve over here. And
I can do a decent job of sitting on my ass doing nothing.
All right, yeah, all right. So that, and then the appendices at the back. So that brings us to the stats portion of the program that I want to dive into, because the appendices are full of the statistics and the maps and all that good stuff that we unearthed over the years. So we'll summarize some of that stuff on these slides. So again, the number of meets that we arrived at is 290. That includes those planned for the rest of the calendar year 2024. I think we mentioned this already, but the most meets that were held in 1 year per our documentation was 20, and that was in 2011. There have been meets held in 41 different states, 2 Canadian provinces, and the great nation of Iceland is also represented. This map color codes the states and provinces by frequency of meets. So, for instance, the white or blank ones, those are where 0 meets have taken place. There are a couple of curious notes for this. Like, I'm a little surprised that Maine is blank, and I'm a little surprised that Arizona is blank.
I'm a little more surprised at Arizona, and I think it's just we never had a critical mass there to organize that. But Maine, no, there's never been one announced. That's one where people just will go as they want to go and bring a person or two with them. But
yeah,
going back as far as I'm aware, there's never been one. No.
Yeah,
there's been construction recently, and still, now that you say it, I'm like, why didn't I organize one? Smacking myself in the head. But it would have been perfect while they were rebuilding the bridges, right?
There was a lot of construction up in the Portland area.
You don't always think of these things. So. Yeah.
So,
time is right.
Red is 1 to 5 meets over the last 25 years. Orange is 6 to 10. Blue is 11 to 15, and green is 16 plus. So what happens is you realize when you take this map and you take Paul's map that I mentioned before, you have basically an area of the country that has become known as the road meet belt, and that is where the highest concentration of these events has taken place over the last 25 years.
It is officially the home of the East Coast hive mind.
According to some people, anyway.
That is a term that we've had for going back to MTR, because all the meets were always East Coast, and
well, this map
that phrase pretty much came from that.
Well, so. This map kind of gives the lie to that idea. I don't consider Ohio and Michigan to be East Coast. So it's not.
I think that has been a little more recent than MTR days.
Well, and if that's the case, then
that population grew, and yeah, we're thrilled that they did. But early on, there was almost nothing out that way.
Well, there were meets out in Michigan and Ohio as far back as the year 2000. In fact, I think the first meet in Illinois was in 2001. So very early there was a pattern of like Pennsylvania had one and New York had one and then Michigan or somewhere out there had one and North Carolina had one. There were a lot of meets in North Carolina in the early years also. So it is far from an East Coast thing, and I would like to gently remind people of that. And again, we talked about the map already, so I don't think I need to repeat myself there. Okay, so this is... We might spend the next hour sitting on this slide. So I'm going to pull out my hard copy here, just so that I can cite this correctly. Appendix E of the book. What this is it's an exercise that takes all of the meet photos and it tabulates attendance at all of the meets that we have pictures of. And so what you end up with, so if you take all the meets from a particular year and average out the attendance from all of those events, you come up with an average score for each year. Now, if you plot each year with that average score, you end up with a plot like this, which shows you on the x-axis it's the year, and on the y-axis it is, I want to make sure I quote this correctly, the y-axis is the average attendance per year. Right? So, if 1999 had roughly an average attendance of road meets of 6, and then up in 2011 it was over 12, right? And it did hit a peak in 2018 and 19, up above 14. Now, one of the things you have to remember about this kind of a study is that it is a little bit problematic in that not all of the meet photos, we don't know the attendance figures for every single meet. We don't have access to all of the meet photos. And there's also the problem that some of the people who were at these meets just were not in the pictures at times. Not always, but a lot of the times.
Oh, yeah, that used to be much more common, that a couple people either didn't want to be in the photo or taking photo of something else, and we just took the meet photo.
Yeah.
2010 is really when this became standardized, and before then there was a lot more variation.
Right.
You could see, my website, I know is out of date, but I have through 2014, 2015. A lot of the early photos say, not pictured, or
right.
Picture taken by, because that person wasn't in it.
Yeah. So, in spite of the problematic circumstances of this little study that I did, which was really begun out of curiosity, and then I ended up sticking with it, because the results of it were they actually make a lot of sense. You can see the general rise in attendance figures as time goes on. Right? So you can see the general... Why is this thing not working here? Let me do this. Yeah, so you can... I'm going to draw this in a different color. So you can see the general upward trajectory.
I also
right?
think a very important note here is that MTR transitioned to AA roads around 2007 or 8. And the trend before then, you had a bit of a spike. Yeah, it was growing. But since then... I feel like the trend has been more consistently upward since then, whereas before then, it's hard to know. But that line, I think a lot more people felt safer on a private website than on Usenet, and I think
right.
that has helped us really grow since then.
Yeah. So maybe 2008, 2009 is when that transition really took place, and that does correspond with another spike in the attendance. So, the AA Roads Forum has really become the main avenue to get the word out about these things.
Yes.
And there's recently been the addition of the Road Meets group on Facebook, and that's been another avenue that people can use. So really, in terms of the study, it's a problematic study, but it yielded predictable results, as you can see. And of course, you can see the dip that took place in 2020 for reasons that I have no idea why. And yeah, right. And you see sort of a bounce back post-COVID. But another reason why this study is a little bit of an issue, and I don't know if this is a post-COVID thing or if this, I suspect it is that numbers can tell you a lot of different stories, and they can give you a lot of different conclusions that are not necessarily accurate of reality. Let's say, for argument's sake, and this was something else that I did out of curiosity, but let's go along with the idea that the year 2024, which is in progress, is going to end up somewhere. Let me draw this in blue for you. It's going to end up somewhere like here.
Sure.
Fairly reasonable expectation that this would be the line at the end of 2024, right?
Somewhere in that range.
I wanted to see what this chart would look like if you took out the single largest meet from each year. Because what happens is that you can, in a lot of these years, get one meet that just absolutely annihilates the average and makes everything look so much bigger. Well, yeah, and yours was right here. Your 2010 meet was right there.
Well, it pushed it higher in 2011, so...
So, yeah, well... One meet can certainly have a significant impact on the average for the year, and thus how we look at this chart. So what I wanted to find out is what happens post-COVID if we eliminate the highest meet of the years that followed. You want to know where this chart ends up? And this is where we talk about what I know you really want to talk about.
But you're taking it, you're taking out exactly one meet that's biased.
No, I'm very clear that I state that I take out the most populated meet because what happened was...
Yeah, but that is inherently a biased way to look at statistics. That's, I'm holding up that is not a valid... That invalidates the data once you do that.
I don't agree. Because one event can absolutely change the way that people look at things and make people think...
you could also take out the lowest event where only 2 or 3 people showed up and drive it up. It's your choice which ones you want in or out.
But I think you would also agree that the highest attending meets are far more rare than the lowest ones.
No. You have to look at those printed pages to get that information out.
Okay. But anyway, if you do this, the graph looks more like that. Now this brings me to something that I actually want to talk about with you, and that is, what is the future of these meets, and what do meets continue to look like in the future? Because yeah, you could look at this, and you can conclude a lot of different things. You could look at this, you could focus at this line, you could also focus on this line. I think it will be interesting to see what this chart looks like 5 years from now. Like, what does this curve look like out here off screen? You know, because one of the things that I notice is that the roads community is aging. It's projected to become a lot less active in these events. It is entirely possible that this was the first peak and that we'll have years that are up in here in the future, right?
With different people, right?
Right, that's one possibility. There is also the possibility that what you're going to see 10 years from now is a curve that looks like this.
If new people do not get involved.
And that brings me to a point of contention that I have made recently, and as I have studied this topic and have gotten really deep involved in it. And this is sort of summarized if you go on to the last page of the book, which is Appendix G, which is a write-up of the average road meet. So you basically take all the numbers,
yes,
all the trends, everything, and you smash it into one event, and that's what I call the average road meet. And what the average road meet tells us is that the average meet has 12 people. at least 10 of them are regular meet attendees.
Yes.
You might have 1 to 2 newbies. However, what you find in the photos, there's no better way to check this than the actual evidence. There is only roughly a 25% chance that any newbie will become a regular. So what you are, I've kind of been getting into doomsday scenarios a lot myself.
Right.
And have you been familiarizing yourself with the whole population decline apocalypse that's being talked about?
I'm planning it.
So that's kind of...
I can't talk about that because once it happens, you're going to hold me guilty if I don't kill enough people. So.
Well, well, that's not...
Okay.
No, that's not what population decline is about. But
fair enough.
No. So I've been thinking about rate of replenishment in the community, and the question that I asked myself, one of the first questions I asked was, and one of the reasons I got really motivated to be a part of this project was I wanted to answer the question of, are road meets continuing to bring in new people at a rate that is sustainable to help keep these things growing over the years? And I found that generally is not the case.
Can I draw a line?
You want to draw a line?
Yes.
Uh-oh. I'm giving Steve the pen here, so look out.
Alright, this is not a touch screen.
No, it is not a touch screen.
What I see the trend, we could talk about this. Rather than continuing to increase, rather than a potential decrease, there is a third possibility here that what we are seeing is at some point we're going to be approaching the average capacity that is sustainable, and it's not really going to grow because, yes, we've had a few 30-person meets. We're going to have a 40-person meet. We're going to have a 50-person meet. How often? It's sort of looking at the weather at this point. So there's a lot of different ways this could be forecast.
Yeah, it's impossible to predict the future exactly,
right.
But I don't see. I think when you look back at all the pictures and you look at what we have seen over the last 25 years, that this is sort of a thing that the road meet thing is something that caught on with a generation of people, mainly from the Northeast and the Midwest. There are a few exceptions here and there, and it hasn't really translated to younger generations the way that it translated to our generation. You and I are of a certain age. People who are significantly younger than us are not generally into this kind of thing.
That's where we're going to have our first disagreement. First true disagreement is that I think, when I think back, I've hosted my first meet in 2010. I was 27 at that point. We're seeing a lot of younger people approach that age, but we're also seeing a lot of older people host all these meets, so they may feel like there's enough meets at the moment. I think that the generations below us, especially those now becoming drivers, going to college now, I'm seeing a lot of younger activity on the forum, which suggests to me that if the older people stop hosting meets, that the younger people will fill in. But right now, since the older people keep hosting these into our 40s and 50s and whatever, that they're saying, oh, there's enough meets right now. And so I think that's why they may seem less engaged, is the opportunity's not there yet for them. But I think with time, if this starts to decline, you will see a new burst of energy from the younger people who want to keep it going.
But they're not going to meets.
They are.
Well, I've never seen these people, so I don't know who they are.
There are people at these meets who are well into the millennial generation, as opposed to a lot of us.
Well, you're talking about us.
No, a lot.
I'm 35, so
Yeah.
we are firmly in the millennial generation.
I'm in my 40s, as are a lot of meet hosts.
Yeah,
and I've kind of stopped hosting them myself. So
right
now, meets are generally hosted by those in their 30s, with some discrepancies. As you get older, you lose the energy or whatever, and then as younger people age, they've been to enough meets, they feel they can host one. And also, people now, we're seeing a lot more West Coast activity than before. When it was East Coast Hive Mind.
Well, certainly then.
Yeah, when it was East Coast Hive Mind, you would just announce a meet and you expect the usual crowd to show up. But now that we're a little more scattered, it's more like, oh, this person is visiting, I'll just meet up with this person. Because if I announce a meet out let's pick a state that we haven't. You mentioned Arizona. If I announce a meet in Phoenix, who's going to fly all the way to Phoenix? I'm just going to meet my friend here, sort of thing. And I think that attitude is out there a bit right now. So, but I think there will be a meet there. I do. See who else?
Yeah, I mean, so to get back to the whole, our meet's bringing in new people. Like, I think that there is going to be a desire to say, well, look at how many people were quote unquote new at the SWIPA meet last week.
There were.
I do think you need to put an asterisk on that, however, because the one thing that I will always say about Jeff Kitsko, and I don't know how he does it, but Southwest PA and Pittsburgh has always brought out the local crowd. That is not the road geek crowd. This is a separate group of people who are into the road stuff, but they're not like with our group of people.
I think when a couple of other notable names left Pittsburgh, Jeff was like, I've got to find some more friends in this area who like roads, and that's who showed up, is his friends who sorry Adam, they replaced you.
Yeah.
No lie though. That is a way to get people into this.
I would agree. Although I think that the SWIPA area is really the one where there's been routine local interaction outside of the AA roads realm. Mm-hmm. There's an exception to every rule, right? So I would say that what Kitsko has done in the last 25 years is really remarkable, and that he's been able to engage the local community in a way that really nobody else has been able to.
Well, how many of them have tried is the question, but he's done a great job, yeah.
Yeah. But I think what really reset my head as far as this phenomenon is concerned is what happened in New Orleans, where there were 20 people who showed up and 18 of them were from the Northeast.
Right.
See, that to me, and this was after I had done the same. I had gone the Kitsko route. I had engaged with local folks, and Jason had done the same, and we had done, we did trailers, and we did all sorts of goofy crap. And that was what we got. And I think it really got me to think about the fact that this road meet thing is more of a generational thing and a regional thing. That doesn't necessarily translate to other regions and doesn't necessarily translate to other generations. And so if that is the case, what is our future?
I agree with the regional more than I agree with the generational. And I think the regional spread is something that is going to shape the future of road meets. But I don't think we have to worry about, are they going to stop existing going forward, or is attendance going to drop as we get older? I think this is going to persist. I think people will keep wanting to meet up. As you get new people, they will have road meets that are very similar to ones we may have done 15 years ago, but these people weren't old enough then. So there may be a recycling of old meets into new ones. I think it is going to keep going. I think that the new generations will pick this up and keep it going, but the changes we'll see are based on geography. That much I'll absolutely agree.
I'm not disagreeing that road meets won't continue to be a thing. I think they absolutely will to an extent. However, my position is that they will start to become less and less frequent, and they will become less and less populated. And the thing about the newcomer and all that is, I really think we would have seen some of that by now if that was really the case. I really think that, especially emerging out of COVID, because I think that's what really made some of those meets post-COVID really popular, was that people were like, hey, I'm not stuck in my house anymore. I'm going to go to a road meet for the first time in 2 years or whatever. And I really think that that's what drove a lot of the numbers for those first couple of years post-COVID. Yeah. So I don't know. You are far more optimistic than I am in terms of what the future holds. We're both on the same page in terms of whether these things will continue to happen. We both agree with that. It's just a question of what they look like moving forward. And I was the one who put together this chart, and one of the things that I immediately noticed was, look at this. There's a peak right before COVID, and then we kind of make we rebound a little bit, but we also rebound on the shoulders of these one meet a year that just absolutely killed the average.
Yeah, but
did
you take that out of every single year?
I did not take that out of every single year.
Again, you have to.
However, what I will say is that one of the reasons why these years peaked as they did was because there were fewer meets in those years. So you have
an attendance average here. How about number of meets? Do you have that chart?
Well, it's listed out in whatever this is. Let me find it.
I know that was not that far behind this one in the appendix.
It was Appendix A lists out the number of meets per year. So you kind of hit a peak in the early 2010s.
Yep.
And then it kind of settles down from there. Like post 2013, we haven't had a year greater than 13 meets.
Let me tell you about the attitude back then. Why those were so high? It was because when you look at that map, a lot of that had not yet been covered. What you see, and many of the isolated ones didn't exist. Texas hadn't had one yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Florida may have had one, but there were just so many places that had not been covered because the same people were getting together. One meet per year in Pittsburgh, one meet per year in Albany, one meet per year in Michigan, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's around the time that we got the attitude, let's branch out. I had my first Seattle meet around that time. I was in Seattle on vacation. I said, let me see if other people want to join me. And then we had a Seattle meet. And a lot of these cities were only covered around that time as this awareness grew that we could do this.
Yeah.
So I think you have those few years burst, and then with all those meets being hosted every week or two all over the country, we started to get more towards the saturation point, and so that's when it started slowing down again. Is we were like, where can we host a meet that we haven't had one, and that people will show up, and kind of left the blank at that point. That's when it started to decline. So it wasn't generational. It was the fact that I could tell you that's a very real attitude we had in chat at the time. Was, I'd like to go to a meet, but I can't think of where I want to have one right now.
Mm-hmm.
My New Jersey's fully covered at this point. It's been a few years.
Yeah.
There was a while when Moss was hosting a meet, maybe even more than one meet a year in New Jersey, because they wanted to see this corner, that corner, this corner, and who wants to join and see this corner, that corner. And I said, I live here, so I've seen most of it. I'll come hang out or something, but now New Jersey's covered, so there's been no more meets in New Jersey because there's been nothing to see until I'll host. I have some thoughts of hosting, but it's our New Jersey meets died down because we covered it through saturation. Everything that hadn't yet been covered, we said let's do it, and then it was done.
Yeah.
So that gets back to what I said before. The next generation at some point will be young enough that they didn't have a chance to get to all these saturation meets, I'll call them. So they were too young to see all these cities for themselves. Now they're old enough. I was like, oh, there was a meet, and you had a couple in Texas. Like, I haven't been to Texas yet, and I really want to go. Will someone be willing to meet me? Can I host a meet there myself? And maybe that may be the next step.
Yeah. I need to see more of these new people involved in these meets before I can believe that that's an actual real thing. That's my point. Because I haven't seen it yet to the degree that I think it needs to happen.
So looking at this meet photo, not naming any names, 3 people who enjoy going to meets, but actually no, the first 2 I don't think host. The third one I think does host locally. Just locally. A couple of people who were sort of guests at this meet, a couple of people who host actively around them, and so looking at that, it's that may be the limiting thing. Is a lot of people don't host faraway meets. You and I are sort of exceptions to that.
It's very possible that the farthest I've ever traveled for a meet is one that I hosted.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely.
Definitely with you. Yeah. Right.
Right. So it's some people are willing to try to plan this thing that way, and some people want to stay local.
Yeah.
And no, I see. I'm looking at this not as this is the future in decline. I'm looking at this as how will the future change from existing. And that's what I'm going to want to see is where future meets are going to be held. Where are the new people interested in having these? How is this going to work? And the new generations, Gen Z now, very computer connected, whereas Gen X is on computers, but it's not the same. We follow things on them versus stay connected. So how will that change how a meet is held? What is done at the meet? Until the 2010s, a meet was you go, eat lunch together, drive around for a couple hours, regroup and see if there's something you want to do after. That's how I held Baltimore. That's how I held Central New Jersey. But now people do the casual, grab your own lunch and let's go. People do the plan your own day thing. There's a lot more planning of only the roads itself versus it being a whole day. It's a big change in attitude over 25 years.
Do you think that the purpose of the meet has sort of become obsolete in that sense? Think about where we were technologically in 1999, where the only way that you could have an interaction with a fellow road enthusiast was in person. No. And as technology evolved, and we really saw this take off big time with the pandemic, with Zoom and with Skype becoming a thing.
You're saying face-to-face type stuff. Okay.
Face-to-face stuff doesn't really need to happen in person anymore. I'm not saying there isn't value in it. I'm saying that technology has made the face-to-face stuff so much easier outside of in-person get-together stuff.
Are you saying, Dan, that all of your videos of all the cities mean that people don't need to go there because they can just watch your videos instead?
I did not say that. I said that...
Well, how do you feel about that? Because that's something you didn't have 25 years ago. If you want to see a construction project or a new road, you had to go there. Now, with your coverage, they can watch your videos, and that will give people the visual coverage of a project. So instead of trying to get out somewhere before this road opens or a bridge is open that interests them, and they can watch your video and say, oh, so that's what it's like to drive it. And does that lessen their interest in going to see it themselves?
It shouldn't.
But I think that goes hand in hand with the face-to-face part.
I know what you're getting at.
Yeah,
I understand
to me,
that.
There is no substitute for true in-person. Look at us right now, sitting in the same room instead of me tuning in from home, where I could have just relaxed for the day.
Sure.
I chose to come up here because I valued the face-to-face, in-person interaction, and I think you can look at generations connected to computers. It can be a question, but when you look at the ages of people and these things, there are still younger people showing up, and I think there is still a drive that something about being in person hits a nerve that just doesn't get hit if you're doing it virtually. But we'll see what the post-COVID treatment of Generation Alpha does as they get older. It's going to be very interesting to see the future there.
You value the in-person because that's what you are used to. That's what you grew up with. That is not necessarily what the young people grew up with.
No, but as I said, I think it's innate to human people that showing up in... There were a lot of people who started in the 2010s when they were in their early 20s, and they all said... This is after AA Rose. This is in the modern era of computing. And they love the in-person. Most people I've ever talked to prefer in-person to virtual. There are a few, but to me, by and large, I don't think. I don't think, but I don't know. You look at Rainey, who's shown up at every meet.
Rainey is a boss when it comes to meets.
So there's a young person at the Pittsburgh meet. We had an under.
But I think it's
under 18.
It's a little unfair to group her in that at this point.
But there are those under 18 who show up to meets, and certainly those college age.
Well, she wouldn't show up without parental. With a parent dragging her to it.
No.
Right? She didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to go see Coco Dan at this road meet.
You don't know.
She didn't say that.
We don't know.
I know she didn't.
That's why I said,
sorry, Laura, she didn't say that.
That's what I'm getting at is I'm going to be interested to see how the young generations, the under 18, maybe under 21, those still in school or going into school, are
the ones who are like this all the time.
They're not like that. That was the for the record, those listening, that was Dan fiddling on his phone, but
staring at my screen.
Yeah, that's what they said about millennials 10 years ago. So There you go.
Well, they're saying that 10 years ago.
I mean,
that's
that's
like now.
I think that's what I said in my interview about millennials. So
Well,
I think it's fair to say that generations change as they get older and mature, and
yeah,
I don't want to put too much stock in the no, this is going to decline because it's starting to right now. I think it's going to pick up again.
Yeah, and I just to kind of start to wrap this up a little bit. I think that, again, I'm just here to be the messenger and to ask the questions based on what I see in the data. And with the shift to online and digital interactions, and the work from home thing has become a big thing, as we know. In-person interaction is less valued than it ever has been in modern history. That's just the reality. And that is due to technology. It's not because of anything that we necessarily asked for. But we had this technology that dropped in front of us.
I've opened this up. I'd like to get to some of the chat in here. And I think this topic is sparking a lot of chat. So I'm going to go by the name in the chat, NW Indiana Elevators. Quote, I'm 24 years old, and I definitely do want to host a road meet in Florida. So there is a younger person who wants to host a road meet. I'm telling you that interest is there.
And that is Jay. And, yeah, he's one of the one or two. That's
every year. I think one or two.
And I think
to
that's. And I'm not trying to minimize him by saying that. I'm just saying that there's not enough of him.
No,
that's my point.
Historically, it's been one or two new hosts a year. So the fact that we have one new host here willing to go is on par. That's what I say.
Anyway, to finish the point that I was making, I think that there are two things that we should really ask ourselves. Is that, what do these things look like in the future if we have a declining and aging population that is below replenishment? And with all the digital communication tools we have, the original intent of road meets is sort of being made obsolete via technology. And I think you're shaking your head.
Exactly.
I know.
I presented my viewpoint about it.
You've already made your point. I know. It's just something that I am a little concerned about as we move forward. And look, if we go back to this one more time, we could look at this chart 5 years from now, and the dots could be all the way up here, for all we know, right?
They could go anywhere, yeah.
Or they could go down here. It'll be interesting to revisit this chart in 5 years.
Or they could level out.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Yeah. The future is always one of these things that comes up when we do a retrospective, especially one this large of this community. And there's one other thing I wanted to mention to you, and this 10 largest meets thing, which I kind of threw together as like a last minute thing because it's not an unreasonable question for people to ask when they look through a book full of meet photos. They might be like, well, which one had the most people in it, I think it's really interesting that 4 of the 5 are post-COVID.
I held that record, man. I think that's interesting, but no.
But don't you think that's a little interesting? That in the last 3 to 4 years, you have 4 that are that large.
I think that speaks to people want to get out there and see each other, and sort of like what I have historically done and intend to get back to. If anybody's listening, try to get to one Michigan road meet every year or two. It's been a while for me, unfortunately, but you often will find that there's one meet where people sort of coalesce and say, let's make that the one. And I think lately we've sort of been announcing meets that way. We've been like, this is this year's the meet.
Yeah.
And so everyone sort of plans themselves around that. If we get away from that, then it'll smooth out a bit. But I think the reason you see one large meet, look at it, 2021, 2, 3, 4 each have one large meet.
That's what I'm saying. 4 of the top 5.
Yeah, I think that's what people are doing. They're picking one meet, saying, let's make that the one. If you smooth that out, if you don't have one meet like that, everyone's going to pick and choose their meets, and that number is not going to go down. It's just going to spread to the other meets, I think. That's my vibe.
So you think it might be more of Like, instead of it being a regional or even a national thing, it might go back to being a local thing.
I think it would go back to a people, like, there were a couple times I might have traveled in a different direction to a different meet if I hadn't already committed to a certain one, because a bunch of us were talking, like, let's do that one. And I was like, all right, I'll join you there. And then there's like, I kind of wanted to do this other one, but oh well, I've committed.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. And so that I think we're seeing some of that. I don't know how that's going to trend in the future, but that's my take.
Good conversation, by the way. I really appreciate you being here
Thank
to
you.
bounce some ideas off of, and you've really, I think we had a really nice discussion just now about the future, which I'm sure that there will be more discussions about this moving forward, and this is just, my perspective and Steve's perspective, and there are a lot of other perspectives out there that weren't heard tonight that I think are valuable also.
And some of those have been expressed in the chat.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. And Dan and I, this is not me getting invited here and suddenly this gets sprung. This has been, we've had this conversation a bit in the past, and we were talking about it and realized we had some different perspectives, and we said, we want to bring this out to everyone, and now on this slide, it's our chance to hear from you. We want to get a lot of different perspectives, because if we have two perspectives, there's got to be more than just two. So we want to hear what yours are.
Yeah. So at this point, there's a Rangers game on in about a half an hour, so we do got to go soon. But
yeah, 30 minutes. I think this is a good time to go through chat and.
Yeah. So if anybody has questions about the book, any of the contents in it, if you want to speak to the author directly, now's your chance to do it. Or you can, reflect on what we were talking about for a lot of the last really half hour, which was the trends over the years and where we think those trends are heading and where we think the future is going for road meets. And again, I think I don't want it to get lost in the weeds here, but I am with Steve 100% on the idea that meets will continue to be a thing, that will continue to exist and will continue to happen, and people will continue to go to them. I think where the two of us differ is on the subject of appearance, what they look like, who's involved in them, and even frequency of them is something that's worth chatting about. But enough from us. If you guys have stuff you want to talk about, we can keep the stream going for a little while here. But I really want to thank Steve for taking time out of his busy Saturday to be here. And yeah,
my cat believes what you just said.
Yeah,
she's the only one.
Your cat's probably like, thank God.
She's been rather infuriating lately. She woke me up today after like 5 hours of sleep, and every time I was about to fall asleep, you just hear the meows from the other room, like, no, you can't sleep today. Sorry. So I am okay with this getting me out, but I think she's a little peeved.
Oh yeah, she's a cat. She'll get over it.
Yeah, I may not survive the night.
Oh boy. Well, anyway.
What do we got? Anybody speaking up?
The chat is quiet, Steve. If you've got any final thoughts on the project or anything that you wanted to bring up that you didn't bring up before, or whatever you want to say about anything.
Yeah, I've been as an active highway engineer, I'm always looking at projects coming down the pike. We've had a couple of sort of informal get-togethers, for example, for the 295 stuff that never ends, and I think there was one formal meet there. But in the past, it used to be, this is under construction. My first meet ever was Albany 03, and it was a local roadway construction project. I think a roundabout was going in, some other cosmetic stuff, and it was sort of an excuse for everyone to get together and see each other more than anything else. So it doesn't have to be the signature premier highway project of your state. It can be something local, and it's like, I haven't been to a meet in a while. Let me invite people over just so I can see people. That has been the attitude of meets early on. I think that's gotten lost lately every meet is trying to see big things, big bridges, major construction, clinched freeways. And back in the day, it was much smaller and local. And one thing I think is worth remarking on the 25th anniversary meet, it was the construction project is far from in its most active visual phase. It was, we're going to get together, we got a speaker, and we're just going to talk to the speaker, talk to each other, and prowl around a bit. It was much more back in the way that meets used to be held.
Yeah, that's the vibe that I got, was that it was kind of a throwback to the old format.
I think there's something here that going forward, you're thinking about the future of meets. I think at some point people are going to say, I haven't been to a meet in a while. I have done this before, by the way. I want to see this construction project before it opens, and I haven't been to a meet. There hasn't been a meet in this area. I'm just going to post on the forum. I'm going to be there this weekend. Who wants to join me? We would call that a mini meet. I have a couple mini meets on my page. One was 1 in 9. What's now the new 1 in 9 truck bridge, NJ7, connecting that over to Tunnelly Circle. I walked on that in the snow a month or two before it opened, and I think there were 6 or 7 people there with me. It was not a formal, there will be a meet exploring this and that and this. And no, it was, I want to go see this thing. Who wants to join me? And maybe we'll do a couple other things afterwards. And the original road meet idea, I think, was much more that. It was, let's go see this bridge and this thing and have lunch together. And what happened at the end of the 25th that is exactly in that spirit? We said, oh, it's a little early. Why don't we go see this thing? And 5 or 6 cars followed each other to the next thing, got out, looked at the bridge together, walked around, chatted a bit, and said, let's go to this next bridge. Okay. And 4 or 5 of those 5 or 6 cars went to the next bridge. It wasn't written down. It wasn't really planned. It was we have time. Let's go do this together.
Oh, yeah.
That is a spirit that I think if we get back to that, the attendance will go down, the number of meets will go up, and we'll be back closer to where the road meet originated. And we'll see what direction we actually go. Will we keep going bigger and bigger meets? Will we go back to smaller and smaller meets? Will we go hybrid where there's a live drive component and people who can't make it can watch you as you're at the meet, but there are also people there live?
Yeah.
There's a lot of ideas to explore, and I'm looking for the next generation of meet hosts to show us what the path forward is going to be.
Well, that was sort of the idea I had with the online road meet. Remember that series? Where you have an itinerary, but it's also geared towards people who are watching on a screen. So there's different, permutations of this thing that could be explored even further. Yeah, I would agree with that. But yeah, so Sconson chimed in and said, basically that he retired from hosting in the Midwest because somebody 10 years younger than him took over and was doing stuff regularly. So,
right.
That I suppose that there is going to be turnover as time goes on to some degree. Yeah.
I mean, on the other hand, Scott could also say, no one's held a meet right near where I live because they're all hosting it where they live. You could be 3 or 5 years down the road, like me right now. I sort of retired from hosting meets, and now I'm feeling a little bit of, it's been a while, and as I said, I have these projects coming up. I might be the right person to host this. Maybe I should, start to set my brain to it now, and when the project's ready, I may end up hosting it.
You get the itch.
You don't know what
a while,
you don't know what the future holds.
Sure.
For yourself, let alone the community, and that I'm taking a very open mind to where this might go, but I think the trend is not going back down. That's if it's per meet attendance going down, I still think overall number of attendees per year is going to trend upwards over time. If you have smaller meets, you'll have more of them. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. All right.
That's what I hope. We'll see.
We will see. With that, I think we are going to close up shop for the evening. So,
Dan, how come you did not announce this as a meet here? We could have had a meet right here.
I know. we could have done a meet photo on the couch.
Why didn't every time you've had a live panel, does that count as a road meet? It was an invitational road meet.
Yeah, we were going to go down that rabbit hole, don't we? Yeah. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am the proud host of 150 road meets.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, we decided to omit those from the book, thank God. But yeah, so that's the way it was on this day. And again, we've been leaving you with this slide with all the contents. The links to all the contents for the anniversary package are located in the description of this video if you haven't already seen them. And with that, I think we're going to sign off. So we have a Rangers game to catch in a few minutes. So on behalf of alpsroads.net, this is Dan from the Roadway Whiz channel, thanking you so much for watching this special edition of our Road Enthusiast Roundtable.
Roads.
And check out the book, and hope you enjoy it. I hope it really is something that resonates with you and that you really get a kick out of seeing. And thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.